everybody, and welcome back to Talk Busy with Lizzy podcast. I'm your host, Lizzy. Please ignore the black eye, but we have a very special guest coming on today. Her name is Kassandra Grace. She is the author of On the Eve of Morning, and I'm so excited to talk to her. I have been following her on TikTok for a while, or we've been following each other and been friends on there, and so it's so nice to actually talk to her over, even if it is just over, I don't know, a call, I guess. But I'm so excited to share about her book, her writing journey, and her own story. So let's get into it.
My week has been good. I've been working a lot. I had a bunch of ministry stuff going on this weekend, which was super great. And then I was working a ton this week and I was just like, I need a break, but I had Wednesday off, which was so nice. So just went to the beach and hung out. But yeah, it's been a good time. What about you? What have you been up to?
It's been good, just podcast stuff. I'm a nanny, so
Sweet.
had a lot of that going on. But also this week has been a lot less busy, which has been really nice because it's been go for like way too long. So
you need that nice break. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
But what do you do for ministry?
So I have a ministry team in the area. They're called Proclaim Jesus. Mostly just it started out as just like evangelism based. And then, we just started a church, on Sundays. So in the afternoon, I'll do worship there. And then, kind of throughout the week, we do other just evangelism things. But this week was crazy because I had like just main service and then other evangelism things. And then, my ministry leader Sunday morning was like, hey, do you want to go drive down like 2 hours away from here and do another service with me? So we had that service in the morning and then I had to drive back up and do the second one. So it was like a whole big thing, but yeah, just a lot going on this weekend, but it was super fun. So God
crazy.
did a lot.
That's so
yeah,
cool.
It was a good time.
That's awesome. Well, yeah. I love hearing about different ministries and stuff. So maybe you'll have to come back on and we can just talk about that. That
would be great. That'd be a good time.
Yeah. So are you good if we just jump into questions?
Absolutely. I have my book right here. I decided to bring it on.
I have mine. Mine's over in the corner right over there.
It's somewhere. Yeah.
I know exactly where it is. It's on the bookshelf over there.
Yeah. Mine's usually sitting on the floor next to my bed.
Yeah.
Just to have it there.
So my first question is, what is your testimony?
My testimony? Oh, man. Do you want the long or short version?
Whatever you want to share. I love stories, so you know.
Okay. Oh, man. Wow. So I basically grew up, my dad's a pastor, my mom's a psychologist, pretty good setup. They're both in the kitchen right now. I can see them across the way.
My mom used to do that while I recorded podcasts because I wasn't getting any Wi-Fi in the other room.
Yeah.
So I'd go into the kitchen and she just would be like, she'd be listening to all the podcasts and she's like, oh, I just love that person. She was so sweet.
All the lore. Oh my goodness. I was just trying to get somewhere where there was good enough lighting, but yeah, so I grew up very much like my parents really pushed me towards the Lord, and which I'm really appreciative because it wasn't like we want you to have your own walk with God, like we don't want it to just be us and our walk, and so that was really good. But I think I didn't really step into like, I guess it becoming super, super real to me until 2020. We had a friend that moved into our basement who, actually, funny enough, he's my ministry leader now. But he moved into our basement and was just like at the lowest point in his life. And he was still like so in love with the Lord. And I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to be living for God. Like, this is incredible. And I just started going after him then. And then there was like actually a period of time where I like developed really bad anxiety. And I basically like I was after the good parts of God, and then I think there were other things that I was still making my God instead of him. And I realized, I was like, wow, I cannot be doing like this half sort of thing. Like it gave me a realization of like, I need to give everything to God or else it's like, I'm nothing. Like there's nothing else for me. Mm-hmm. And so then like he kind of put me through a process. I hear stories of people like just the anxiety poofing away. I was talking to some of my friends about this the other night. But it like wasn't like that for me. He really put me through a process of like teaching me, this is how you deal with this is how you deal with this. And then it came out where by the end of it, there were things where I always just thought, oh, that's just how I'm going to be. Like, these are things I just have to deal with, where I actually completely grew through it. And I'm at a place where it's like, I've never been so content. Like, I've never had such peace before in my life. And it's truly just because, like, I submitted everything to God and I realized there's nothing else but you. So that's kind of the short version. It's an awakening and then like a reawakening, I guess, at two different points. But
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm the same way with kind of my walk. It was also 2020, so that's really funny.
Sweet.
But that's, yeah, I think that's a lot of people's stories. If you like growing up in the church, it's like you grow up, but you don't necessarily know God, and then you come to that point, and then you even well, and this is the same for a lot of people who do give their life to Christ even without growing up in the church, and then they have like a second point of like really truly dedicating their life.
Yeah, that happened with like one of my friends too, where I think her story made me realize what God had done in my own life, because she was super firm in the Lord, like was going to YWAM, doing all these things, and then had like this whole thing come up where she had to realize, like, even though she loved God and he was really important to her, she had to come to a realization of, oh, I actually need him. Like, I need to really rely on him. I need to realize this is what he saved me from, so that I can like step more into what he has for me. And she was talking about that, and I was like, oh, that's exactly what he did for me too. So I think that's super interesting.
That's awesome. And it's so cool when we have friends that we can talk to about those things,
Mm-hmm.
and like come to those realizations, and how like God speaks through our friends too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fun just seeing people with different experiences, but at the same time, it's like, oh, I can relate to you in these ways.
Exactly. Did you see the weird thumbs up that kept popping up?
Yeah, what was that?
I have no idea.
Cool.
I just was like, Anyway,
I guess the app liked what I had to say. I'm like, awesome.
Apparently.
It feels so important now. Thank you.
Right. Maybe we just turned them to Christ.
Yeah,
know?
amen. Yep.
That's actually so funny. And now my thing's Wait, this is funny. Again, it's all a learning process. I don't know how
learning. I know this little headphone keeps like moving and it's annoying me, but it's okay. If you see me touching my ear, that's why.
It's okay. At least it's not like AirPods, because I had this one guy come on and he had AirPods in, and every time he touched it to like put it back in, it would hang up.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean,
That's
it was
great.
fine. We like just went with it and kept hopping back on.
Great.
But at first it was just like a lie. And he's like, I am so sorry. I should not be using these. I don't know why it's happening. And I was like, don't worry about it.
I was like, I probably should not use Bluetooth, so I just dug these out of a drawer.
It's perfect. It works.
It works.
Mine's the same way. I try to use AirPods or anything like that, and they just fall out so easily.
It's so annoying.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
So my next question is, how long have you been writing for?
Oh, man. I honestly, like, when I was really, really little, like a toddler, I would have like book ideas and I would draw little pictures and I would have my parents go. I called them my scribes. I would have them go and write in the words for me. We just found a few of those like a few weeks ago, and they're sitting on my coffee table. But honestly, like, that's how long, like, ever since I was really little, I've just been like, I've loved storytelling. I've loved writing. And then like kind of, I wrote my first book in 7th grade.
Wow.
It was like, I finished reading The Maze Runner and I was like, I want to write a really cool dystopian book. And I wrote like a whole book that I then tried to edit, and the writing was not good. The plot was really interesting. The writing was not good, so I didn't end up doing anything with it. But I've done a lot of like songwriting over the years. I used to write plays. I don't think I ever finished any of them, but I did. I kind of wrote them.
Cool.
But it's just been jumping between mediums, honestly, my whole life.
Nice.
Up until now.
Yeah.
So,
Did you were you ever in theater?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a theater kid in middle school.
Love it.
Thank you. I think you can tell if you're around me long enough, you're like, oh yeah, this is an ex-theater kid right here.
I also think it's like love the dystopian, like that's the kind of books you're writing and everything, because I feel like that time frame of like Hunger Games, Maze Runner,
Yeah.
Divergent, that was such a good like dystopian time, and then I feel like there's no real good dystopians after that. But like
Yeah.
I like yours. Yours is really good.
Thanks. It was a good era.
Yeah.
I know. I've been like reading all those books back again and like reading the Hunger Games. I'm like, oh, this is literally like there's stuff about this that's like today. Like this is crazy. It's just
Yeah.
so interesting. There's the parallels between like fiction and real life.
And that's
Yeah.
why I talk about like how cool like writing is and storytelling is, because yes, like what's what happens in a fantasy or a dystopian might not be like exactly what's happening, but there are parallels and there are things that like it's just an artistic way to tell the story of what's going
Yeah,
on in the
absolutely.
world.
Yep.
And so I think that that's so cool.
Yeah, I have elements of that, like in my own writing, I think as well. It's just like how can I paint pictures of things that are kind of going on, but you can also kind of use your imagination at the same time. So, yeah.
So why do you write? Like what either what makes you want to write or what like keeps you going?
Man, what keeps me? I have to think about this one for a second.
You're good.
I always like honestly, I feel like I really connect with the Lord through writing. I I wrote something down a few months ago that's kind of like sat in my brain where I said, like I was thinking about evangelism and I was like, maybe evangelism is just like telling the story of Jesus like over and over again in different ways. And then I kind of like looked at my writing and I was like, it's the same thing with my writing as well, as like finding different ways to like preach biblical truths or just talk about Jesus in different elements. So like my On the Eve of Mourning, this one is an allegory. So it's like very much reflected on actually what happens in the Bible. But like I have another project I'm working on now that's like just concepts that are biblical. So I feel like ultimately like I write because I find joy in it, but it's also like it helps me learn more about God and see different dynamics and hopefully bringing other people to an understanding of God and just what he's done and all those things. So I think it's kind of just, yeah, those two things together. It feels
Amazing.
like, it feels like a fun, like unique way of just connecting with the Lord, you know, and it's special too, because not everyone has that way of connection. And it's really, yeah, it's sweet. It's like its own thing between me and the Lord.
Yeah. I think that's so cool too, because for me, writing, it's easy for me to do that in a contemporary, realistic fiction way.
Mm-hmm.
But like for me, I don't know that I could ever write about biblical truths and everything like that in a dystopian or a fantasy. Like that's not the
Mm-hmm.
way my mind works. And
Mm-hmm.
so I love seeing other people do that, because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's how their mind works. And that's the talent like God gave them of how to
Mm-hmm.
share the gospel. And so I think that that's really awesome. And I do
Yeah.
really think that evangelism is just telling the story of the Lord. Like, you should read the book The True Story of the Whole World, and it's about how the Bible is like a 6-act play, and it's
Ooh, this sounds
so
interesting.
good. Yeah, I loved it. I read it for my global studies class my freshman year of college,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the best class I've ever taken in my whole life. Like I love that class. But we talked about how the Bible's a story because that's how people understand things. They understand in stories. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's crazy.
No,
And I
even
think
like
that's
Jesus, like preaching in
parables.
parables. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's so cool. And I mean, I think that's where my journey like really started, of just being a storyteller in general more than
Mm-hmm.
just an author. Because it's so cool that like God designed it that way. Like he
Mm-hmm.
designed us to understand stories, to get a better understanding from stories. And then to go out and preach, it was also about the different ways that you can reach different cultures and the different stories that they would understand. And
Yeah.
it was so cool.
That is really, I would love to read that. That sounds so interesting.
I'll send you a photo.
Yes.
I have to find where the book is in my bookshelf, but I'll send you
The bookshelf.
There's so many books.
Just swallows things.
Yeah. I thought it was gonna, because upstairs I did not have one, so they were all stacked in my room. So I thought this would make it so that I had everything perfect, and no, there's way too many books.
I have like this stacks of books around my room too, so I have like the shelf that's packed, like double layered, and then there's just stacks everywhere on the floor.
Exactly.
Yeah, perfect.
So what was your writing process like for the Eve of Morning?
Oh man, it was a long one. I first got the idea, like, I think I first started writing it September of 2022. I first got the idea in like August. I made a TikTok a second ago where I said September, and it was definitely August, but whatever. So I honestly, I got the idea, and then I kind of was planning it for a few months, and I don't think I started actually really writing it until December, which is crazy because usually like when I get ideas, I just start writing and I have to stop and like plan things out, and I don't know. I did it perfectly last time. So I started writing it in like December. I think I wrote the whole thing in like 2 months, which was pretty cool, aside from then the editing factor comes in, and that took a really long time. Yeah. I was kind of like editing on and off for like 2 years, to be honest. No. Wait, I'm so wrong. I first got the idea in 2021. Yeah, and then I was editing on and off for 2 years. Okay, there we go. I was like, something about this timeline isn't working. That's what it is. So yeah, I spent like a lot of time just like, I would be in a season where I wasn't doing a lot, and so I could just kind of plow and keep editing and like going through all the things, and then I would get through a season where it's like I was doing a bunch of schoolwork or whatever and didn't have time to edit, and so like it spent a lot of time just like on my back burner just throughout the days, and I think eventually I finished up school, weirdly enough, in October of 2023, and I just had this, there was at one point in time I always dreamed of like having a book published before I turned 18, and so I realized, okay, I'm doing ministry right now, I'm not doing school. Is it? Oh my gosh, it loves what I'm saying. I love that. That's so crazy. Sorry. So I love being encouraged like that. That's awesome. So I was doing ministry, I wasn't doing school, I had time on my hands. I was like, I need to just sit down and finish like getting this edited, so I can get this published. And so I had like this crazy timeline. I think I decided in like, I want to say October of 2023 that I was like, I need to get this done. And so I was like finishing up editing. I edited, or oh my gosh, I hired an editor off of Fiverr, and had her like go through everything. And then I took those edits and was just like plowing this thing out. And I actually ended up getting it published the day before my 18th birthday, which I thought was like perfect. I was like, I got my goal. But ultimately it was a very long process, and a lot of it was just me having to like get the motivation through the seasons where a lot was going on to just keep going and get it done, because like the Lord really put this story on my heart, and I'm like, I need to steward this. If this doesn't go anywhere, then I'm not being obedient with what I felt like I was supposed to do. So yeah, I could get into more details about it, but ultimately it was a very long process. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. Some of my books, yeah, I wrote long time ago and then completely redid and just kept working on, and
Yeah.
It takes time.
The
It's
final
hard.
draft is so much different than the first draft. I'll randomly look back on the first draft and be like, why did I open it like that? Like,
Right.
what is going on here?
Yeah, and then it's like crazy because you see how much has changed, and then sometimes I think about how many people I see cranking out like 3 books in a year, and I'm like, no, couldn't be me. I'm jealous of you, but could not be me.
I could probably, like, I write so much that I
I can
probably could, but, like, I couldn't make it sound good.
Well, that's what I'm like. I can write. I usually write a couple in a year. It's more
Yeah.
the like, okay, but then you have to go through edits and you have to go through rewrites and all
Yeah.
this stuff, and it's like I couldn't publish 3 books in a year.
No, there's no
Yeah.
way. That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's that's something else. I don't have time for that.
No. I think it's so cool for them, and I'm very jealous of them, but I could never.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's crazy.
Yeah. Did you like your the person you hired to edit?
Yeah. I really liked her. I actually learned that it's a lot cheaper to go outside the United States to hire people. Um, whoa, shocking. So I had like a list of people from like all these different countries that I was looking at, and then I decided on a woman in Australia who she was like 27 but had like this whole degree and experience in writing, and
Awesome.
it was, yeah, she was great. She like totally went through, fixed a bunch of grammatical stuff that I didn't even know existed.
Right.
And yeah, it was just giving me other tips here and there. I gave her a very like close to finished draft. And so she just kind of like put other tips here and there that I kind of could just incorporate in. But it was mostly grammatical things, which was good.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
I'm always curious. I mean, I loved my editor. I am switching editors, but it's not for like bad reasons necessarily. I just wanted to try someone else. So, I'm always like, I don't know. I like hearing about like, because I've heard horror stories and then I've heard like really great stories. So,
yeah, she was great. She was even like, I'll read it through a second time if you'd like. And I was like, I would, but I'm publishing in like a week. It was like so stressful trying to like hurry up and get everything done. I was just like, I have this goal and I need to have this done at this date.
Yeah, it makes sense. I know.
Yeah.
It's stressful. Like as it comes down the line, when I ordered author copies because I did like a book launch party.
Yeah.
It all came, I misput in something in Amazon. And so they came wrong. And then literally I ordered the new author copies. They're supposed to come the day before the launch party and they didn't come till 2 days after. And I was like, no, but it's okay.
My gosh. How did you do? Like,
So I ended up selling the bigger copies because they were huge. Okay. I don't have them with me. I was going to show you, but they're all upstairs, but they were flipping giant because I don't know. I guess I was not paying attention to what I put in, but I put in the size of my PDF, and so the size of the pages were supposed to be.
Oh.
And so, so they came really big. Anyway, I ended up selling them and saying for $2 more, you can buy the big one and I'll get you the small one. Like, so for $20 as a whole versus like just $18 for the regular version.
Right.
So that's kind of how I went about it. So it worked.
That works. Yeah. You made it work.
Yeah.
Problem solving.
Right.
Oh man.
But can you tell us about your book?
I sure can. This is my book.
Yeah.
It's called On the Eve of Morning. On the front of it actually says, what would you do if you knew you were going to die? I just stuck that right here. That was like the inspiration surrounding the whole thing. I basically got the idea. Did you see the Loki TV show? Mm-hmm. So this third episode, they're on like that planet called Lamentus, and it was like, because they were time traveling, they knew, oh, this planet's about to be destroyed. How do we get off? And it kind of struck something in me of like, oh, they know that they're going to die and they're still trying to like escape it anyway. And it just kind of put this idea in my brain of, oh, I could write a story similar to that where like the people know that they're going to die and they're like ignoring it and trying to fix everything anyway and like get off this planet. And so I had that idea like on the back burner for a second, and it just kept it kept growing in my brain. So I read a book about it. But yeah, so basically this tells the story of, it's about a family. My main character's name is Eve, and it's about her family. They live in this country. It's a fictional country that I made up. It's out of like the eastern half of France, which there's a bunch of cool history there. But they they're in the country. I'm trying to figure out how much to tell. The country is like an anarchist country, and there's a lot of really interesting things that we learn about that as the story goes on. But at this point in time, there's a black hole that's appeared, and where it is in relation to the sun, basically it's pulling the earth in the direction of the sun. So the earth is pretty much, it's going to burn up and be destroyed. And so it tells a story about this girl and her family, and the only way off the planet is a ship in Israel, which is kind of ironic with the world events right now. But anyway, I was not planning for that. But anyway, so the only people they're letting onto the ship are Israeli citizens. And my character, her and her brothers kind of come up with this idea of like, we could try and get over there and get false identification and get off the planet. And so the whole beginning is like them trying to convince their family into that. And so the book itself is like a journey of them getting to the Kedim, which is what the ship is called in Israel. And just this things that come up along the way, because there's a lot of crazy, chaotic things that happen. She, when she leaves the country, starts receiving like texts from an unknown number, like giving her advice on how to handle things as like all of these different things are coming up, and there's people kind of like after them and they don't know why they're after them. And so just a lot of like kind of mystery elements. But ultimately it deals with, my characters, the relationships between everyone. There's a lot about Eve and her older brother Viridian, because he's like super pompous and she's really bugged by him, and it's just like this relationship there, and then also all the secrets of her younger brother. And so just a lot of things with their family, but ultimately too it does deal with like her mental health, and like a lot of the mental health things I went through are portrayed in this story, and then ultimately how she comes out of it is similar to my story with that too. So it's like there's a big plot and there's a lot that's going on and all of these different components, but I think what it really comes down to is the characters and how they deal with everything, like the emotions that are coming up, and just this question. There's this thing in the back of their brain the whole time of like, we know we're going to die. Why are we doing this? We're wasting our time. So yeah, that's probably the shortest version to that.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I love how like you do put bits and pieces of yourself into it, and how like I talked to another author about this on the podcast. It's like you put bits and pieces of yourself. It's not your story by any way, shape, or form. And this is obvious in it being a dystopian that it's not your story.
No, it's not.
But for her and for me, like being contemporary and like realistic fiction, it's very much like you put bits and pieces, but it's not like that. That's the character. That is the character's story. But it's cool that we can put as an author bits and pieces, because you write what you know, and it's just something that I think is really cool. And I think it's really important to talk about mental health things too. And so for you to put that in there is pretty awesome.
Yeah, there's even like, you'll see just little things that she does, like when she's anxious, and like those are all portrayed things that I used to do, which is so just the little bits and pieces are interesting. And then even like her relationship with her best friend is based off of me and my best friend. But her best friend is me in this context, and then Eve is my friend, but they're like, the characters are nothing like us. It's just kind of the relationship is similar, but like they kind of, it's interesting when I write characters, I think that I'm like getting to know them instead of I'm developing them. So originally they were a lot more like us, and then the more I like got to know them, they kind of became their own thing, which was interesting. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, right? I know.
Yep.
It's so interesting to see, because sometimes I don't plan on certain character development, and I get to the end and I'm like, this character really like came out of like his shell or like whatever. Like, it's so cool. I talked to another author about just kind of about that of it not, you're not developing the characters, you're getting to know them. And she was saying like that character has a story and I'm just meant to write it. Like I'm just meant to get it out. And it was like, it's so cool that like to look at it that way, that like it's that character's story.
Yeah.
And to write it. And then for Christmas one year, someone gave me a book and it, I was looking through it. It's about being a better writer. And it was like, sit down and interview your character. And I was like, whoa, never thought of it that way. And like now I feel like I do that every time. I'm like, so how would you respond to this scene? And then I'm like, okay. And then I write it.
My favorite thing to do, which is similar to what you're saying, is I go through and I take like the Myers-Briggs test for all of my characters. So because that really it's like a temperament test, which is more about how they approach situations instead of like their personality. And so it's interesting because I can like, I'm looking at these questions of, oh, how would this character approach this situation? And so then I have like this kind of image of just how they address problems. And then I can apply that throughout the book of how they're addressing different problems that come up. So that's really helpful. And I love doing that.
I might have to steal that one.
Yeah, it's like an extra way to interview them because you're getting really deep questions in this little personality test, and it's
that's so cool.
Yeah, or temperament test,
right?
Technically,
I might steal that one.
You should.
What do you want people to take away from your book?
Oh man, ultimately, I want people to just have a new understanding of the Lord through it. I think it paints the way I wrote, like, I'm trying to not spoil anything too much.
Right.
The way I wrote, like, the God aspect of it is very much my relationship with God and how I feel that he is to me, just in my own walk. And so I think in reading that, people would get something that's really real because it's something that I've experienced. And of course, like, God has been written in different ways in different books. Like we see like C.S. Lewis or Tolkien, and there's just like, just these different ways that they've written God characters. And so that is a very present thing in fiction, which I think is really cool. But I also think like having kind of a dystopian model too, gives you an even new perspective of, oh, this is what God can look like. This is what he can do. So ultimately, like, I wrote this with the idea of wanting people to come closer to Christ through this and like just feeling like the love of the Lord through it. And just kind of like, there's a lot of chaos throughout the whole book. A lot. Just having like the chaos and like the peace juxtaposed and feeling the difference there. And then also like the things they're going through are like really serious, you know? And just recognizing like, oh, like in our lives, like there are things that we go through that are really serious and aren't fake, but God has a solution for those things. And so I think ultimately I want people to encounter God in one way or another, whether they realize it or not. I want them to encounter the Lord through this story. And I also want them to just like see a part of themselves in it too. I think all of the characters, like you can look at the characters in this book and pull out things around, you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of like me. That's kind of like me. And so that with having the God component in it, hopefully will make people come to an understanding of, oh, there is something here that's like me. And so there must be some truth to this. So I think ultimately, yeah, just whatever leads people closer to the Lord.
Right. That's so cool. And again, I think it's really cool for me to see that because my mind can't go there in a dystopian way. Like, I could never write that. So to see how someone writes that and to read it is really awesome. What is your best piece of writing advice?
Of writing advice. Honestly, like, there's a few different things. I'm trying to think what to put out there. Writing your characters for your plot, meaning, like, if you have a plot, and there's, like, different things that come up. So, like, I'm trying to think through how to word this. Like, say you have a story that takes place in the ocean and there's a bunch of things going on. The best character for that plot, if you're trying to make it dramatic, is having someone that's afraid of water or afraid of the ocean. And so with like writing things now, I didn't do this like as much with this book, but I kind of learned it more and more as I was writing it and as my characters developed and kind of stepped into their own person. But just having having your plot super solid so you know what characters fit well into it to create the best dramatic effect. Like, if you have someone thrown into an adventure story, like, if your main character is someone that's already gone on a bunch of adventures, it's not going to be as, like, terrifying as someone who doesn't know what they're doing at all. So just thinking, like, what development do I want for this character and who best would accomplish this? And then just, like, getting to know your characters. Like, you can kind of set them up in a way where you're like, yes, this is the character that would be right for this story. But also, like, I want to get to know you and who you are. I could just give an example for the story I'm writing now. I haven't really talked about this.
That was gonna be one of my questions.
Oh, perfect. Well, we're jumping right to it then. What I'm writing right now is based on morality. And it's actually a fantasy, believe it or not. I never thought I'd write fantasy. But it's about, like, this world where there is no such thing as absolute morality. And I have, like, a character from our world that's thrown into it who is incredibly moral. And at the same time, she's also incredibly self-righteous. And so it's her being in this world where there is no morality, and you see her kind of becoming self-righteous in it. But also she has really good morals, so it's kind of like this little game between those two things of morality and self-righteousness. So, like, having someone thrown into that world that already doesn't have good morals wouldn't have as much of a dramatic effect is ultimately what I'm saying with that. But yeah,
I'm excited for that one.
It's fun. I like it a lot. I've been working on the beginning, and I think it's super fun.
And apparently Riverside liked it too. You got another thumbs up. So.
I know. That's awesome. I saw that one. I was like, oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so how far, like, into this one are you?
I have spent a lot of time plotting it. There's events in it that are, like, based off of the French Revolution, so I have to do research on that and just a lot of different things based on things in history. So I'm trying to do a lot of plotting and a lot of world building, but I've written the whole beginning of her being, like, in the normal world and then just moving to this new world. Yeah, so not, like, a ton, because I've been working a lot, but I have done a good amount of plotting, which I'm proud of. And there's a lot of world building that needs to happen with this one too. And it's, like, taking everything inside of me to just stop and plot everything and not just, like, start writing it all without knowing what I'm doing.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting though. Because I feel that one's really gonna speak to the world right now. Like,
yeah.
I think
I got the idea from an Instagram post where it was like, these are lies that the world is telling us that isn't biblical. And one of them was that there's no such thing as absolute morality. And I was like, what would a world look like where there is actually no such thing as absolute morality? So yeah, it's, like, something that the world is saying right now.
I have a story for that. Do you mind if I share really
Yes,
quick?
please do.
Okay.
I would love to hear.
So you know who Charlie Kirk is, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I went to go listen to him speak at the university in Seattle, so
sick.
UW in Seattle.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it was so cool to see him. It's really cool. I've seen him a couple times speak because I've gone to multiple events, but that specific one, there was a guy who came up to ask a question, and it was about absolute morality. And this guy he was like, I don't believe in absolute morality, all this stuff. So Charlie Kirk was like, so what about like Hitler? Do you think that what Hitler did was wrong? He goes, I believe it's wrong, but I don't think there's absolute morality. So that technically, while I don't think it was right, it's not actually wrong. And I was like, oh, why would you say that?
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, it's first of all scary. And like Charlie Kirk was like, well, at least you were consistent with your beliefs, but like that's really bad. And the fact that like that's where the world is going to where like stuff like that, yes, they're like, oh yeah, like it shouldn't have happened. I don't agree with it, but that doesn't make it wrong. It's like,
well, if you don't have something to like hold yourself accountable to, like if you don't have a belief in God, that there isn't judgment, then it's like you can do whatever you want. It's fine.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what I've been realizing too. I've been realizing like, that's why I think I started not the reason I started the podcast, but something that I've really been realizing and trying to come to an understanding of, and wanting to like talk to people who aren't Christian, is like, I don't think if I did not have a belief in God, a lot of my morals I would not have, and I wouldn't understand why I would need to believe certain things. And so I really want to talk to other people who aren't Christian to really understand that aspect.
Yeah.
And to teach Christians that like, if you don't have the Lord to hold things to and hold yourself accountable to, you're not going to be able to have a morality, really.
Yeah.
You know,
you need the fear of God. That's like ultimately what the world needs, is a fear of God. Like I think that's what's ultimately going to bring about change.
Yeah.
And we've just lost that as a society, which unfortunately is very sad.
Oh yeah, I know. It's and you see it more and more every day, and it's just, so I really think your book could really help out. You know.
Thank you. I know. I think it's really interesting. I even have like, I took like the concept of morality and personified it into a character that then was like outcast from society. So it's like, that's kind of like the God figure of something that everyone's being held accountable to, that they decided to like get rid of. Oh my
gosh, Kathy, I love this.
It's so, oh my gosh, I love it so much. But basically, without saying too much more, like how I did it too is I was thinking about this. I'm like, what would a world look like that truly didn't have absolute morality? I decided basically that there wouldn't be death, because everything that is immoral leads to death in one way or another. So I just took out death from this world. When they outcasted morality, they also got rid of death. And so it's like this world where everyone is living eternally, but they're living like in brokenness eternally.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Without saying that much, but yeah, that's basically how I'm approaching it.
Okay, so sorry about this. With the global study class, we talked about that, and how like, if God hadn't outcast Adam and Eve from the garden and they had continued to eat from the tree of life, they would have been eternally broken and lived in eternal immorality.
I just got the chills when you said that. Whoa, right? I didn't even realize that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was like, she was talking about how actually like making Adam and Eve leave the garden was an act of mercy on them. Yeah. And I was like, whoa. Because then that means that they they can come back to a redemptive, full relationship with God. And I was like, whoa. So that totally reminded me of that. That's so cool.
That's really, thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting. Wow.
Because you never see that. Like, there's so many things about the Bible that, like, I'm coming to understand that, you know, you hear these stories, especially growing up in the church. I hear these stories all the time and I'm like, oh yeah, so this happened, that happened. But like, this is why this happened. This is why that happened. It's so cool.
Oh my gosh. Like truly sitting down and reading the Bible for yourself and seeing all the connections once you get older, it's like, this is insane.
Yeah.
Like I was reading Matthew yesterday, which I've read how many times, and I had something pop up like at me that I've never seen before. And it was like this whole connection with the Old Testament, and I was like, whoa. But yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So cool. The Bible's so cool.
Yes, literally.
Oh my gosh.
So what did you learn from this writing and publishing journey?
What did I learn? I learned a lot of things. I ultimately, I guess this is more what I wish I would have done better. I had like that date that I wanted it to be done, which is good. And I'm happy that I had it done by that date. But there's also things that I wish I would have like been able to slow down and just done the steps more thoroughly. So I guess like, yeah, what I learned through that is it's really important just to take your time to perfect the craft, and make sure everything looks the way you want it to look and how it's meant to look. Trying to think. I learned that the finished product looks a lot different than the first draft. A lot different. My characters changed so much. I even like towards some of the later drafts, like how Eve is by the end of the book, I didn't have her like that until some of the later drafts. Because the middle, she becomes like super desperate, and I kind of carry that to the end, whereas in the final draft, she's just like angry at the end. And I didn't develop that until like very much later in the process. And so I just think I learned to be flexible with how things change. And even like writing this new book, I'm just writing a first draft knowing that it's going to change a lot and that I need to be flexible with that. So I guess, yeah, ultimately I just learned like, just go with the flow. Like if you need more time, like take more time. If you're seeing that things are changing and that different things are going to work better than how you initially planned, like go with it. It's very much an intuitive process. I think we can try and set up this format for how everything should work. And a lot of the time that's good, but ultimately like it's an intuitive process and you have to just kind of bend and go with what ends up working. And at the same time too, like flowing with God and it flowing with the Spirit, like where is he leading? So just not getting stuck in your own ways of this is how this should look, because it's not going to end up how it should look. Yeah, I'm happy I had it released when I did, but there's also part of me that would have liked to take more time on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, awesome. I think that's ultimately what I would say I learned the most.
Yeah. And then my last question is, how can we be praying for you?
Oh man. Wow. Going deep now. Yeah, I guess in writing terms, like just for this next project, kind of knowing where to go with it, because I have a lot of ideas that I'm really excited about, but just knowing what's right, where to go with everything. Yeah, I'd say that.
Yeah. Well, I will be praying for you, and I know my listeners will be too. So
Yay.
Thank you so much for coming on the
podcast. Of course.
I was like, I need to get you on. I've been thinking about that for so long, so I'm glad we like figured out
I'm
a date.
glad this worked out too, because I was supposed to be working all day today, and then I had a girl be like, I really need hours, can I take your shifts? I'm like, sure, that's fine. So it worked out really well.
Yay. I know, it was perfect because I was supposed to do an interview this morning originally, and then we had to reschedule it. And then I was like, I still want to do an interview. And I was like, oh, I need to reach out to Cassie again. So let's do that. And it was
Perfect.
like, it worked out so good.
It did work out so well.
It's awesome.
Yay!
But yes, thank you so much for coming on.
You're
and it
so
was
welcome.
really fun to talk to you, not just over TikTok.
Yeah, this is a lot better.
Right?
This is a lot more real.
It's so fun to see, like, I've done it with a few authors now that I met on TikTok, and it's like, it's so fun to really, like, talk to you, because, you know, you see the TikToks where of each other, and then you text a little bit, but there's a huge difference between actually talking. And then one day maybe we'll see each other in person, and then it'll be more cool.
So thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, because I definitely did. It was so nice to finally talk to Kassandra. She's so sweet, and I'm so glad I get to help share her story and about her book. So make sure you go follow her on Instagram and on TikTok, and then also go buy her book. It's really, really good. It's dystopian, and I am so excited that I get to share about it. So make sure you go do all those things. And also, if you want to support the podcast, join our Patreon. It is $5 a month, and it's the best way to support the podcast. Of course, share it with your friends. Be praying for the podcast. And then also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Patreon, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. I feel like I'm probably missing some, but they're all linked below. And then also, if you want, you can also buy from some companies that support us. So the first one is Elevated Faith, which is a Christian clothing company. Absolutely love them. I think their apparel are great conversation starters. Similarly, Dwell is another one that we work with, and I love them. I love both those companies. I have lots of stuff from them. And I think, again, it's really great and easy to start conversations through clothing and through things that you have and use. The next one is 28 Co. If you're a girl, you need this app. It gives you insights, recipes, grocery lists, workouts, all based on your cycle, and then also is a period tracking app. And it's so important for us to understand for us to understand our cycles. And so I love 28, and you need it. Let me tell you. It's so important. And then Cowboy Colostrum is a superfood. It helps with hair, nail growth, all that fun stuff, and then also your immune system. And then lastly, we have Opre Beauty, which is like a Pilates health and wellness brand, and I am loving them. Such cute things, stuff to help your skin. Try not to actually use anything on my skin right now just because of the black eye. It hurts. But I love them, and so highly recommend. Hope you guys enjoy this week's episode. I'll see you guys for next week's episode. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless.